All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Paula Waite and Julie Rudolph is here with me. Julie helped out with the race. I would say co-race director, lots of vetting and setting that she helped out with. So welcome everybody to the Stubborn Fool debrief. What I'm going for tonight here is really just to get to chat and have teams share a little bit what they did. I think sometimes we hear from some teams, but we don't get to talk to everybody. So I thought this might be a nice format to get to do that. So good to see everybody. Big congratulations to Red Mountain, getting 30 of the CPs on a really tough day. I think it was pretty soft out there on the bike. So we're looking forward to maybe having Rib kick things off and share what your strategy was when you got the maps and got started. What was your strategy for the day, and then how did execution go? Tim, I don't know if you've got maps that you want to share. Otherwise, okay, yeah, go ahead and share.
Sorry, I don't have like screenshots or anything, but if I can, do you want to actually pull up maybe? I saw you had them online. I haven't pulled them up yet, but
yeah, I can share.
Here, yeah, I know I got it actually. I found them. So
yeah, okay.
Is screen sharing allowable here? I think you have to click the up arrow next to screen share and say allow participants to share.
How about now?
Cool. Yep, that's it.
Awesome. I thought it might be better if you drive because you know where you were better than I do.
Yeah, perfect. 1 sec. It's being weird. Hold on. Okay, I think I got it now. Is that the map there? Can you see that? I'll zoom in.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we loved the course design. It left things so much to racers to pick their routes and strategy. And do you bike to points and run in, or do you do a big trek loop? And you know, we took like as much. I think we left TA at like 10:29, like for the start of the race, right? Because we took that entire time to try to figure out what's going to be the most efficient route through this. And I'm not positive we picked the most efficient route. I think there was actually a bunch of like pretty close routes in terms of like, you know, maybe it's a little more trekking distance, but the nav is easier, or maybe it's a little less on bike, but we think we can get those. So our strategy was basically, we went back and forth, and Anna's just getting back from yoga class, so she's walking in here too now. We went back and forth between trek and bike, I think more than a lot of teams did, just having talked to people after the race. When we went out, we basically went on a trek section, only got these 6 in the far southeast corner. So I think we did an order like 13, 12, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then left the whole rest of these trek points that's in this initial boxed in area that the headquarters is also in. We left that to approach later from the bike. So we ran and got those on foot, left on bike, and over here in this area is where like, let's see, 16, 17, and 15 were on the aerial map. I think we went and right across from 14. There was a trail that took us in a little ways and grabbed 16 and 17, grabbed 14, left the bikes on the road and ran up the hill to 14. I think we approached 15 from well up here and then cut down to it in that field, and then basically biked all the way up to this trail crossing on the road. And then we got the north part of these ones all on foot up here with our bikes sitting here right off the road on that trail. So I think that was maybe how our strategy varied. We saw a lot of people trekking up here and no other bikes up here. So I think there was, sorry, our dog's being a little needy. I think that was probably one difference. I will mention though, like I talked to like Stephen Reginald, Gear Junkie, after the race, and they did this whole loop all on foot and actually then grabbed 15, 17, 16 on the way back to headquarters. So that's like another really good strategy, I think, to include both those maps together in one big trek loop. So then after that, I think it was pretty straightforward. We just nabbed everything in like a counterclockwise order. This far BP6 up here, luckily that was paved, unlike a lot of the bike ride, which was very slow. And then we got a flat tire on here, which I looked back at our track and we were stopped for about 9 minutes fixing a flat on this here. But then I think we went up and got 26 and 25 from this corner here. Got back on the bikes, got 24 as an out and back on this trail. And then just basically took the trails counterclockwise loop around This was all, anyone that rode the stuff knows that this stuff was all so slow and muddy, which is a little problematic for us because the first half of the bike was pretty fast, the direction we did it. So we're thinking, oh yeah, we got time to get all these. And then as the trail got muddier and deeper, and we were sinking in, we started to realize pretty quick we weren't going to be able to clear it. So by the time, we rolled into, like, we had 6 left on that aerial map. We were able to snag BP1, and then we just got the ones that were like close to the trail, like 21, I think, was here on the map. We just kind of ran out and back to that. And then we had just enough time to grab 23 and 22 up here as an out and back, and then just keep an eye on the clock, knowing it was a K.5 left, and we could do that in about 6 minutes of riding. So it was tight. I think we got him with like 2.5, 3 minutes left. But that was the overall strategy. It worked out to our advantage that we had saved like some of these far marsh points. I know I talked to some of you there on the call that was pretty nasty and deep and wet in places. That was maybe a good thing to save for the end of the day, as it turned out. But things went pretty well for us. I mean, there was no real big nav issues. I think I had one error on one of those big, it was this saddle up here. I went to the wrong saddle for a second, but I think it was no more than maybe 3 minutes of errors throughout the day. That was just tough. It was just a physically hard course.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so Tim, which ones did you skip then? Or because you left 3 out there, which ones did you?
Yeah, so on the aerial map, we skipped 18, 19, and 20.
Okay.
And we were planning to get them on the end as just part of a big loop off the bike, but we just ran out of time. Had we had time, had it been, a 7-hour course, or had the conditions been dry, I think we would have had time to get those as a loop. But again, it ended up being some pretty decent ones to skip, because that was a pretty significant distance to leave off.
Okay.
Tim, I noticed that you guys left off 18, 19, 20, but still got, I think, 21, 22, 23 on your way back.
Yeah.
Was it just the distance that those ones were from the bike that you decided to leave 18, 19, 20, or was there a plan to go from like 22 into 18?
Yeah,
if you had the
had
time.
we had time, we would have biked all the way to 23 and done 23 to 22 and then 22 to 18, and then continued that clockwise loop to 19, 20, and then end on 21 and then run the trail back. That was our initial counterclockwise plan there. Yeah.
Tim, was that that plan pretty clear when you sat down with the maps, or how much did you all have about the approach, and how did you settle on what you chose?
I mean, I think we went back. No, it was not clear at all, right? I mean, there's so many options, right? We went back and forth a ton, whether to do this trek loop all as one, right? So you start to add up, like, well, what's the extra distance from, basically it's like, what's the distance from 12 to either 5 or 11? And then you have to, knowing that you also have to then take that distance back, versus what's the distance from the road up here into these points. So again, I mean, like, we were measuring it out with a map wheel. So we have like a ScaleX tool map wheel. We were measuring everything, and we kept coming in, like, it would be like 4.2 versus 4.3 kilometers. So it was really close. It's got to be a wash at that point. So then we're just kind of thinking, well, what's a nice way to, like, where are the approaches best? Sometimes it's nice to vary up the discipline. It certainly takes a minute to transition, but you can also, like, if you keep switching back and forth, it saves your legs a little bit, keeps your legs fresh going back and forth. And that's kind of where we settled. The distance was, I think, just a little less, but it would have been pretty close.
And you all do not wear bike shoes, right? So that's not a concern for you, switching shoes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're wearing trail running shoes the whole time with power grips on our pedals. So yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, yeah, that would be something to factor in, is just transition time. Yeah, but I think, like, between me, Tim, and Eric, we all had like different ideas of what to do, and I think that was such a cool thing about this course, Paula, is like, I don't think any team did the same thing. And it's not to say like one is necessarily better over the other. It just, I mean, we just kind of picked something and went with it. And then Tim would kind of adjust on the fly. So even though we had a plan, like, we'd get out there and he's like, oh, actually, we're going to get this point too now that we're here, and come back. And so we're constantly adjusting, like, while we were out there too.
You all had a new racer with you this weekend, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Jimmy was actually Anna's old, like, childhood neighbor, but we ran into him at some other races. Like, he's a big time mountain biker and skier.
Great runner.
Yeah, he's a marathon
really
runner.
Great athlete.
So he was great. I mean, he was so strong on the bike, and you know how it is if you're fast and you can, I mean, yeah, he could join in and keep up really well. So and actually added to our team speed, I think. So he had a blast. It was fun to kind of bring a new racer along and show him around the woods. All right, can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Anybody have questions for Tim and Anna?
I was surprised you talked about distance rather than like, I guess you mentioned the approach, but a lot of our things were like, okay, we went to CP5 and it turns out that that was way downhill. So we were, we kind of glanced at it and we were like, okay, we'll go to CP5 and we'll come back to the trail and we'll do the one on the west side of the trail. But that was not practical. And we ended up doing 12 or doing 11 later. So we went down to 5 and we're like, well, shit, we're down in this valley now. We have to go to 6 and then carry on around.
Yeah, so when I was designing that, I originally had CP5 bumped a little bit to the southwest. I was kind of going to stay higher on that spur. And I thought it made for a more interesting choice, right? If you kind of got pulled down a little bit more. So yeah, that was kind of intentional. It wasn't real pretty going from 5 to 6 because there was some logging in there, right? Did anybody cut through the pines? So there was kind of a row of pines in there that's shown in the white where the 1150 is. So the woods was a little better there, but you don't know that till you get down in there.
We went to the edge of those pines and apparently that was a river, which was fine. We just had to not step in it, but we were like, oh, there's no trees because there's a river.
Yeah, so absolutely. When we were picking our route, like it is certainly distance, but we certainly, I mean, this is a huge ridge through this with significant, I mean, these climbs take significant amount of time and energy. So we were also trying to minimize the amount of times we had to climb up. So we certainly, I think as we went from 10 to 11, that was our big up and over was 11 to 6. And then basically we stayed low, even going around. So from 6 to
No, 11 to 5.
I'm sorry, 11 to 5, 5 to 6, and then from 6, we stayed low and went around and kind of just cut our way through here rather than climbing back up and trying to get on the trail over to 7. We went around this way. And
this
then
is not something you really get to like deal with often in Wisconsin, is kind of figure out your route with elevation. So this is something we've run into like a lot more like outside of the state, like down in like Georgia and even Missouri and like I don't know, other places with a lot more elevation. So this is, yeah, in Wisconsin, you really don't get to do this a whole lot, but yeah, it's figuring out like, is it faster just to cut the straightest route like up and over, or is it faster to like contour around? I don't know that we've still come to like a conclusion on that, overall, but that made this really fun.
Anybody else want to share their day? Casey, we were talking, are you up for kind of sharing what you all did?
Yeah, I can kind of go through our thought strategy and then what actually played out. Let's see, I'm going to try to share it on the live logs map because I can zoom in on that. So my wife and I compete together. We're a 2-person co-ed, and we always look at what it would take to clear the course. And so we put together kind of our strategy initially for that. And then we started talking about where we were going to drop if we needed to. And pretty much from the time we drove our van down the road to get to the parking lot, we were feeling like we didn't want to do a ton of biking. Just knowing that a lot of the roads were dirt roads or we were on the snowmobile trails, which sounds like those might have actually been better than the dirt roads. But when we saw it, we decided we were going to try to clear the nav that was right by headquarters. And then our plan was to go out and try to clear the aerial nav. And then we were gonna go and do as much as we could for biking. And if we got up to these bike checkpoints up here, that we would maybe get those. And so that was kind of like our big, if we could clear the whole thing picture. And then as we started to go through it, we started to realize, well, there are places where we need to consider, should we get this bike checkpoint on foot after we're out here? Or should we bike out to get some of these? And so our initial plan was pretty much do everything on foot, bike over to the aerial, do everything on foot, and then see what we could do for biking. But then we realized as we looked at it more that we were going to kind of leave some stuff out. So we actually, on the first one, cleared everything except for 14. We knew that we wanted to get that from the road on a bike, and we were going to come out and do kind of like 14, 15, 16, 17 in that area together. We had talked about getting 7 on foot from there, and we ended up having some nav errors out here and frustration to just making sure that we got back on our nav. We forgot that we had talked about doing that. So that one we did not grab. But then we had the plan of getting these here. And then we were going to come back down around and kind of do what Tim was saying about coming through here. But then the race itself happened and things did not play out that way. But we did do, we started, and we basically just went in order, 1, 2, I think we went 3, 4. We had some struggles getting down to 5, but finally found 5. Tim, don't feel bad. We made that same mistake on that saddle too. We were probably closer to like 15 minutes to correct our mistake, but I was super stoked to see that you went to the same spot that we did also. So that made me smile a little bit. And then we actually came over, and I think we went 8, 7, 9, and then we're coming down to 10 and working our way back. And as I said, we had a couple bobbles in here. If you have a chance to look at our live locks, you'll be wondering where we were going. One of them here on, I think 10 was, we saw a trail that we used as our attack point, and the trail that we used as our attack point was not on our map. And so when we went back to reset ourselves, we found the actual trail, and it was a super easy one to get. And then we worked our way back in, did 12 and 13, grabbed some dry socks and headed out on our bike. We went up this road, quick got in on 14. We went all the way up, got 15, and then we came back and went in on our bike and got as close as we could on 16. And that's where we parked our bikes. We got 16 and then made a horrible nav error. And we were going east-west in our mind until we needed to turn and go north and check the compass to see that we actually were going north. So we actually came all the way on foot, pretty much all the way up to 15, even though we didn't need 15. We thought we were coming on the aerial towards 17. So we had to recorrect that. And since we got 17, we knew that we probably weren't going to have the time to come and park our bike here and do all of this. We felt like 18 was a pretty easy one, and it was from there. So we got 18 from 17, and then we backtracked to our bikes. And the big reason we did that was we were worried about not getting our 1 bike checkpoint, and we wanted to make sure that we were official finishers. We had seen lots of people out in this area on foot, and a lot of people joking around about, don't forget where your bikes are, don't forget to go back to your bikes, and those kinds of things. And we were very aware of that. And so we wanted to make sure we went back, got our bikes. And so we actually biked then all the way down to BP1 and then looked at how much time we had left. And so we decided to get 21 and 23. We had intended to go in and get 22, but we just didn't want to chance it. And we went back and we had, I think, 10 minutes left on the clock when we got back there and that. So, so that was kind of our race strategy. We knew probably 2/3 of the way through this first nav that we were not clearing the course. And so we kind of checked in with each other and felt pretty good about leaving the bike as the area that we were off on. So we saw Paula after our first nav near headquarters, and we kind of told her we're getting one bike checkpoint and we're going to try to clear that aerial. And we came up a little short on that, but we were pretty happy with how it turned out, but definitely had to adjust a lot once we were out there and going. And some of that, like I said too, we felt like we made kind of 4 nav airs, one of which was a major nav air, but we were excited that the other 3 no longer became major ones. I feel like even a year or 2 ago for us, once we got off map and started wandering, we would just keep wandering, and now we do a better job of resetting ourselves and getting back to something that's on the map and that we know. So we were happy with how long we were lost for, not too long.
How do you reset, Casey? I think for new teams that are thinking about that, and what's your strategy been for resetting?
So to me, that's like one of the hardest things for us, and that we've actually like asked some of the teams like Tim and Anna their strategies, and we keep on trying to work on that. It's funny, our team name, I'm in charge of the map. We picked that early on, but my wife and I go back and forth, and it's not even necessarily that I'm in charge. It's you're in charge of this now. My wife can read the topo lines very well, and so she can sometimes read it. I am all about finding a trail intersection or a actual like building or something that's on our map, and going back to that. But finding something that we're really sure of. I think it was checkpoint 5. Yeah, down here, that not only us, but quite a few other teams, that was early on in the race. We went down early. And so we were actually here, but we didn't realize that until we got down there. And so everything we were seeing in front of us was on our map, because there was a hill we were supposed to go to and we could find the hill. And so that was really frustrating for me. Kristen kept on reading the topo lines, and we kind of made our way back to this, and we realized we had gone in too early. And then that's when we stayed still down in that lower area, but we just kept working our way around until we actually saw the hill that we were supposed to. If I had to reset there, I would have gone all the way back up to the trail and reset. But so using something that you are very confident that is unique in that area, I think is the important thing.
This is Kevin of Kevin's wedding training team fame. Our most hard won checkpoint / most interesting one was off the, I think, 23 following 22. So there's the bike going west, and there's these 2 points that look like they're right next to each other, and just a skip off that lower trail. So you're like, okay, we'll just go to 23 and then we'll just go right to 22. It's going to be so easy. But it turns out that there's a wall of brambles between the bike trail and 23 until we found a little tiny walking path that was really nice to get to 23. And then from 23 to 22, we ran into Silver Fern also there. And so we teamed up there, and he's like, well, I've already been that way a little bit, so we'll go a little different. And just using the satellite map and just creeping our way around the edge of the marsh. And we're like, it has to be some, and we just deeper and deeper and deeper into the marsh, around the marsh, and we finally got it. So we were very happy when we found that one. We felt like we had earned it.
How
So
about, oh, go ahead.
I'm also from Kevin's wedding training team. This is Nisha.
One of the
So
wedding trainers.
yeah, and Tom's with me also from said team. So one of the questions I had was, how much do you just like accept the terrain and just be like, I'm just gonna get scratched to pieces here? or like let's spend 2 minutes to try and find a little trail, or like let's go through the swamp versus like hop from like small like place to small place. Like how do people make those calculations? Is it like as you get more tired you just accept the pain, or just sort of what are your thoughts?
Tim or Anna, you want to?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say, a lot of times, like if we know we need to cut off of a trail and bushwhack into a point, we will run along a trail kind of looking for a clearer area to get through. Sometimes we find it, sometimes we don't, but we've had a lot of races, you know, early on when we were racing where we would spend way too much time looking for like the perfect way across a stream where you wouldn't get your toe wet, or like the perfect way through the woods where you wouldn't get a scratch. And so it's kind of in between both of those things. So if you can find an open route, great, take it, you know, go as long as you can to kind of like scope it out to maybe find an open area. But at the end of the day, like, you know, just knowing kind of how slow it is bushwhacking versus how slow it is taking an easy route around that's faster is most helpful. So I think it's a 1-to-3 ratio. Like if it's really thick bushwhacking where you're going to be moving slow and punching through a lot of stuff, it's about a third as fast as if you have like a longer route around. I don't know, I think I'm
Yeah,
explaining
no,
that
that's right.
well.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you look for like a nice trail that's like a long time, you know, 3 times the distance, it's going to be about equal. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
explaining that
And
well.
that being said, like
Yeah.
yesterday, I think we took pretty straight shots to most things because the woods were pretty open for the most part. I mean, my legs are certainly pretty torn up. I mean, I've got gashes all over my legs because we were just kind of running full speed through like briars at times. And that's just part of the sport you get used to, I think. But yeah, Anna's absolutely right. Like the trail conditions were slow anyways yesterday, especially when we first started and it was like slippery, that at that point we're just like, well, let's just jog through the woods bushwhacking versus, you know, we're not going to be able to do a full on run down this trail anyways and take the long way around. We just kind of tried to minimize distance at that point.
But obviously too, like for something for like CP21, it was on the north side of a little marsh. You know, you're not going to tromp straight through the marsh because it's really small when you've got a nice little dry area along the side that, you know, like we all at that point, when we knew we were at the spot, we all, because there's 4 of us, we all split up and like spread out, you know,
10 meters.
within the distance that we could, you know, but we all just immediately like spread out and I'll go into the like, you know, bushwhack through, and whoever finds the quickest route and gets to the marsh, and that way like you have a lot more eyes looking for the point. And I happened to see, okay, the west side of the marsh is a lot more clear. Eric had our little punch. So I was like, Eric, over here, this is faster. And he could, you know, not run right through the marsh, he could run around and punch it.
And then you're all just a little spread out, and then you all gravitate toward whatever that best trail is when you find it. But yeah, I mean, when I'm running, when I know a bushwhack is coming up, I'm telling the team, keep an eye out for any game trail or any kind of opening in the woods. Because sometimes all of a sudden you just see something, and it's where the deer have been going through, and that just saves you a little bit more effort.
But sometimes you just have to go through the brambles, and you try not to be the first one to have to go through the brambles.
I will remember that advice.
How about Steve and Amber, are you all prepared to share a little bit about how your day went or a little bit of the course? I'm putting you on the spot. We hadn't talked ahead of time, but
We can try. We'll attempt. If there's any additional background noise, we'll might have to
remove the children.
Yeah. We started. Yeah, we did a pretty simple course. We did almost all of them from the first nav, I guess the immediate area, except for 14. And we did kind of a counterclockwise route. And we did pretty good at the navigation. We had one error on CP5 where we jumped off too soon, and that was silly and looking at it in hindsight. But otherwise, we really enjoyed having the open area where you could just look around and see all the terrain. And even that one, when it's like, we realized we made a mistake, it's like, oh, we're on this hilltop. Okay, this is that hilltop. There's a spur over there, and you could just see so far. That was made it pretty nice for navigating. And then we got on our bikes, did the 3 off the aerial nap. Aerial was a little slower, but not too much trouble. And we just took off on our bike, expecting to do the whole thing. And our contingency, if we were getting late, was we'd skip BP 6 out and back. And then we had, the remaining 6 aerial ones that we cut those off if we were running
And
slow.
14,
And 14.
which
But
we were like, oh, that'll be easy and fast.
and so like, oh, we're thinking we might get close to clearing, and then we get to, was it BP 2 or 3?
Yeah, I mean, BP2 are kind of trudging along, and BP3 we actually stopped and stood there for a
BP 3, I
while.
think that's when we had to refold the map. So it was when we were refolding the map, it was like, oh, there's still a lot of biking left. Like maybe we should not have.
So we
done
actually
this
did,
loop.
since we had used the map where we like did a quick calculation, and we were like, we've been biking between 5 and 10 miles per hour. It is so slow and so painful.
Yeah.
And we're strong bikers. It's always our strongest discipline. So we're like, oh, we're for sure gonna do all the bike if we can. And at that point, we were like, no, what do we do? And so we sort of looked at the orange snowmobile trail, like, should we cut through? And we're like, at this point, that's gonna be slow, and we're not catching a checkpoint then. So we're like, well, let's just,
If
I
we-
could
if
finish
we
it.
Backtrack, it's almost the same distance to going forward. And
So
you
we're
don't
sort
get
of
any
like,
points.
we should have done this, but here we are. So now we'll just continue on. So we just continued on. And by the time we got to the 3, 24, 25, 26, my feet were like ice. So I was actually really happy to get off the bike and kind of get some blood back into them. And that was really fun. And that one we had planned to use the trails and do originally I was like, well, we want to stop our bike and go get 26. So we actually hit 24 first, parked our bike at that intersection. Yeah, if you see those little, like the V, that's where we parked our bikes, and we went up the north trail and got 24, and then again, and then ran over to 25, and then just kind of went around the spur and up to 26. And then our plan was to run back to the trail. And then that was really actually great. It was really fast going back, because at that point we were like, we need 30 minutes. We need 30 minutes to get back. And then if we have a little extra time, we'll hit those other ones. And I was also calculating, like, if anybody stayed and did all the nav and only did the 1 bike checkpoint, they would be ahead of us. So we're like, we need to get 3 to put ourselves, on the nav that we hadn't
I
gotten.
think we still, at that time, we said we needed 30 minutes to get back, and we had 45. So like, oh, we might be able to get 1 or 2, or maybe even 3 if they're easy.
Yeah. So then we were like, oh, this could be good. And then
And then we just hit some really soft, slow roads where I was literally in my second to last gear. Like I was going almost as slow as possible trying to get through there. And that sucked up all our time.
And Steve, he hadn't put on his toe at all because he'd been sick all week with like a bronchitis thing. And so he was already not feeling well at the beginning of the race. We had a lot of bickering because I was trying to go faster and he wanted to go slower. And I was like, we're just kind of getting our feet back under us after nationals. And just sort of like, I don't know,
We realized like last year we did all 3-person races because preparing for nationals, and then back to just the 2 of us. It kind of reset the dynamics again, and we have some work to do on that. So
yeah, there's a lot of like me arguing about, we should have done pace counting sooner so that we knew what our pace counting was now, and just stupid stuff. And then my legs were just shot, and just sort of the situation of life and not having time to train, and just feeling frustrated about stuff that's just kind of out of our control. So the course is amazing. And I think the conditions of the biking were frustrating, but just like, that's how it goes in adventure racing. And that's part of the excitement too, of like, oh, we got to change our game plan. But then just sort of like feeling like we're out of shape, and just, this
knowing
race
we
always
could have
wakes
done a
us
lot
up,
better. Yeah, we could have done a lot better. So.
But that's reality and that's life. So here we are. And it was still fun in the end. And I think, our races will improve after this.
I'm really interested found it interesting how many of you all decided to do the nav points that were really close to HQ first. I had anticipated that teams would kind of go out far away and end kind of cleaning up the stuff, because you can get back pretty quickly, right? And I'm hearing a lot of you saying, oh, we knew we had this much time and we had quite a distance to come back. Did anyone think about that? Like, oh, let's save the nav close to HQ until the end, because then, if we're cutting close on time, it's a lot quicker to get back from, say, CP 12, 13, right? Than coming back a long way on the bike.
I'll say for us, I thought that it would be good to get a sense of how long the nav would take, since nav is usually our not weakness, but it's just not our fastest thing. And if we save it to the end and there's a bunch of checkpoints close together that you can get, 10 to 15 minutes apart or less,
Yeah.
and you spend like half an hour on the bike, I think in our minds, we're just like, oh, well, if we don't clear it, we'll get really close. So I think it was just sort of a shocker of like, oh, wow, we really left a lot.
We knew we
out
had,
there.
like, we knew by leaving those aerial ones at the north and central ones, like, we had options. If we were rushed on the way home, we could trim those off. And so having options at the end of the race was good. So that was kind of our plan.
So our decision on that, and I think, Paula, normally we would have done that and left some of the trek nearby at the end. Ours was just based on the weather. Like, we didn't want to go out, like, it was still kind of raining, right? Like, we didn't want to go out on the bike right away and just be really cold on the bike. We thought we'd warm ourselves up by running first. And then, so we started the race without jackets for the first 2 or 3 hours, thinking we're just going to build up enough heat. But then, then the bike was still, we eventually put jackets on because the bike was just cold and wet and muddy.
We were thinking too, we didn't realize so much of it wasn't going to be pavement, because I think on one of the maps, what looked like was paved roads ended up being the muddy roads. And maybe we looked at it wrong or something, but I think we were thinking, oh, it might clear up a little bit later in the day. And then it'll be warmer, the roads might be clearer, they might be faster on the bike. We were wrong on that, but that's probably what went into that decision.
I'm curious, for those who've done races before, it was nice that there aren't a lot of leaves and there's not a lot of undergrowth. Can you tell us what is more typical? How much does that matter versus like?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly as you get later in the summer, right? Late
lot,
summer,
yeah.
it gets really thick. Like, I think this would have been that part of the race would have been tougher, yeah, later in the summertime, because
Yeah, June, even like getting into like late May, like June, July, like stuff is so much thicker. Like, and the leaves are in, and so you can't see checkpoints from as far away. It's just a lot thicker to get through.
yeah, it was nice because you could spot a lot of those checkpoints yesterday at a pretty good distance if you had a clear angle at them. And certainly, in a month, that's not going to be the case.
I wasn't there, but I've done one stubborn fool last spring. Hi, everybody. And to answer Kevin's question, from a not very good navigator standpoint, the lack of leaf cover is incredibly beneficial. You can be off by a ridge line, off by a draw, and still pick something up, from a long ways away. I noticed that with my daughter last year when I did the fool for the first time. Like they said, later on in the summer, you better nail it a little better. But it's a nice way to start early in the season, I think, having it that way. I think it's a great way to start.
You even had a little bit of snow trails yesterday leading to and from points, which is, I think, a first or maybe a second for a stubborn fool. I think we had a Devil's Lake here with some snow too, but not often do you get a little bit of tracks leading to the checkpoints at certain places.
One thing I observed when I was setting was that, sometimes you're not quite sure where the trail is. And when I was out, at least, the trails had snow on them. So it was pretty easy to know, like, oh, yep, the trail's right there. And I could go a little bit faster towards that. Whereas when there's not snow on it, it all kind of blends in. Everything looks brown, right? So it was a little easier to find that. So the snow kind of helped with that, at least on Thursday, that was. And Joel, you didn't give yourself enough credit. You're a great navigator. So I think there were a bunch of head shakes when you said that.
I didn't find anything today.
For us, when we came up on 23, that was the benefit of going counterclockwise, is that we saw it actually from the road. So in this kind of without leaves on the trees, at least I do a lot more of like trying to look further rather than necessarily try to get to the point first and then find it.
So,
Yeah,
something
we
else,
thought it was nice
I'm sorry,
too.
go ahead, Casey.
Oh, I was to say, when you were bushwhacking, sometimes that because it wasn't so dense, you could actually still see land features out in front of you, which was nice.
Shifting gears just a little bit, something else I want to share that we've figured out over the years that's helpful, especially when you get a really big map like that and it's like a rainy, wet day and you don't want to be dealing with the map. This map was super helpful, Paula. So what we did is we measured out distances on that big map because we knew the scale and we were able to measure those distances. And then we transferred all the distances we'd measured on the big map that had a scale to this little map. So I did most of the biking just off this little map. I mean, until like, right, until we got to like 24, 25, 26. And then I'm taking out that big map. Well, I'm taking out the pieces I cut up of that big map to navigate to those. So I'll yeah, so our big map ended up just being these two pieces, which were easily put into waterproof like Ziploc kind of bags, right? Yeah, so most of my bike nav was just using this, and I think I took a scan of one of them. This is like a piece of what that small map looked. And I, you know, if you're new to this, you got to be really confident when you start cutting up a map.
Well, and I think for the first few years we were cutting maps, we would always take the extra pieces.
No, we got them. We took them with us.
Yeah, and always pack them in the pack, because you just never know. You're going to end up needing a part that you cut off and you didn't realize, like if there's an extra checkpoint to plot when you're out there. Like Paula made us nervous about before the race when she saw how much we were cutting the maps. She's like, oh yeah, there's going to be a bonus checkpoint out there, you have to plot. What are you going to do? But anyway, so yeah, always pack the parts you cut up if you're going to cut them like that, because
yeah, but it made it so I didn't have to do like any folding or anything. It was just switching a couple times, and then that was all I had to do in terms of map management, rather than having to refold that big thing. It depends on the race, right? Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It just happened to work that we could cut that into two pieces because the middle was all kind of given. It was all shown easily on the on that 8.5 by 11 map that of like the county roads and stuff.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's a great strategy. My worry for some teams would be, what if you go off of what you've cut off, right? And so you had some of those big area maps, the one that you ended up using anyway. And I like to include those because sometimes some of our CPs are close to the edge of the map anyway, and it would be easy to go off of that. So for new teams who are like, I'm going to cut my map up too, yeah, great advice to take the pieces with you just in case. Anybody else have tips on how to manage those big maps? Because it's a lot, right, to be folding up. Anybody have anybody else cut them?
I proposed that we cut ours at one point. We decided that we probably shouldn't, in case, you know, like you said, if we were wrong about how it was.
We have learned if Paula gives us a map, there is a reason, and that we should try to help figure out what that reason is. And so we always definitely make sure we kind of cross-check the maps that we have and why we have them. Looking at last year's, as we were getting ready for this year, we realized we did not use the county roads map that told us which roads were sand. They weren't dirt roads last year, sand roads, and which ones were paved. So we really made sure that we looked at that one this year. But always, yeah, just kind of making sure that those supplemental ones are there for a reason, and trying to figure out what that reason is.
Although I will say, the map that you did give us, Paula, when we started out, the roads that were mapped with the double white in between double black was labeled local road, and they were mostly paved. We're like, oh, great. Most of the biking is going to be paved. And it turned out a lot of the local roads were mud. So you never know. You never know what you're going to get from those maps. I do have a question for everybody else. We didn't end up using the single track map at all, like the Black River State Forest, because I think when I glanced and just kind of cross-referenced, it sure seemed like, Paula, you had every one of those maps on your map, on that topo map, like all those trails from that single track map. Did anyone find a use of that single track map other than just like seeing that it lined up and maybe just getting a different look at it?
Yeah, basically what you said, like confirming it's like a simpler view. It's like, that's that, right? Not like this other random line that's on the top of a map.
I felt like there were enough "you are here" signs on the trails that you could kind of confirm that without really needing that trail map, but that's a nice way to just confirm that. The reason I included it, so, to Casey's point and Tim's point, like, well, Paula puts it in there for a reason. My reason on that one was that I knew they had some of those trail maps at the trailhead, but there weren't enough there for everyone. So I was concerned that you all might start taking those and then it wouldn't really be fair because some folks would have that trail map. So I thought just kind of had that off and include it for everyone to make that fair. So I didn't really have an intent with that other than that I wanted to make sure everybody had the same information.
We used it a couple times to like confirm the trail name was actually the trail that we were on. The other thing that we did is we plotted the points onto that ahead of time. And then it was nice that, again, Kristen and I kind of nav together or swap maps and that. And so then we kind of were cross-checking each other. One just using the trails map and one actually using the big topo map. So it's nice to sometimes both of us be looking at a map, although I know that can lead to more disagreements sometimes too.
That was a question I was going to ask you, Casey, is, you talked a little bit about handing off that map, but when I've done that, I've found sometimes it's hard to just receive the map and be like, you feel like you got dropped in the middle of the woods, right? So having that trail map is helpful. When you don't have that, how do you all hand off efficiently and stay on the map? Are you kind of stopping and looking at it together, or what's your approach there?
So we attempt to stop and look at it together. I usually don't give Kristen enough time to look at it before I ask her a question and tell her to make a decision. And she reminds me that usually that she needs a little bit more time to get herself on the map before I can ask her, where are we supposed to go? That is the hard part about going back and forth. We try to keep the map in one person's hand on a certain section and really only switch, like if we go from navving to biking or from biking to paddling, that's usually. But with that first nav, there was a lot of it that we could do using the trails. And that's a part that I usually do a lot of it with. But there was a couple of them where we got off the trails and we were simply using the topo. And I end up going, are we supposed to be looking for a hill or are we supposed to be looking for depression? And so I'm still working on that piece of those topo lines. But yeah, so then it does take a while to like hand it over and let her really know where we are on the map and center herself again before that she can go forward with it.
Steve and Amber, how do you two nav? I think you've both got the skills, right? It's not just one of you. I'm wondering how you hand that off as well.
I would usually stay one person per section, so not handing off in the middle of the section. And I don't know, we really don't have any strategy other than that. So we decide who's doing what, just kind of who's in the mood for it.
Yeah. Mostly I do the bike nav because then we just keep the one
map board
on my bike. And if there are supplemental maps, then we'll have some. We're starting to lose it here.
Yep.
We'll hand off then. Once, and then I guess like sometimes with a third teammate, we'll just kind of rotate. With Jeff, who was on our team last year, we're giving him some chances to navigate because we know it kind of sucks if you're just running the whole time. So yeah, we like to have variety, but not have somebody just on all the time because it's mentally exhausting. But like I got to nav I did most of the nav in the 3 northern between the biking, the 24, 25, 26.
Tim, do you nav the whole time? Or do you trade off?
Yeah, on our team, I'm navigating the whole time.
Okay.
I guess when you get into really long, like expedition stuff, I found that can be really helpful. Like in C2C, the 72-hour race we did a couple months back, there was a section where individuals could go out and like just one person at a time while the rest of the team was stayed at HQ for that, or the transition area for that part. And it was great for me to be able to hand it off and like get some sleep and like rest my brain for a few hours so I could be on for the rest of the race. But in stuff like up to 30 hours, yeah, I'm usually navigating the whole thing.
Okay.
But I'm certainly referring to teammates for help. And like, I think that's a big thing as the navigator, like not just kind of being just like on the map and just thinking in your own head, but I'm talking out loud pretty constantly as we're moving and saying, hey, help me look for this. Keep an eye out for a trail on the left. There should be a hill rise on the right. Because sometimes I'm then buried in the map and I'll miss those things. So I'm kind of relying on my teammates to be my eyes, on the ground as we're looking for things. It's helpful in the daytime race, and it's super helpful at nighttime. When you're looking for trails, like I think of like the mule up and all the like stuff you got up in Cable Hayward, right? Like it's so easy to miss terrain features and trail intersections if you're just the only person. And when you have a team to help you out looking for that as the navigator, I try to like really relay that to my teammates. So I've got extra sets of eyes.
What are you doing
A lot
with
of teams
distance, Tim? I
do it.
think, because as you all were leaving on the bike yesterday, I was kind of hanging out and I heard you giving off some distances right away, right? So for new teams that maybe aren't familiar with pace counting or that distance, how do you all manage that?
Yeah, so pre-race, if there's anything I'm going to measure that time allows for, I'm measuring all those bike distances. And then, yeah, we've all got our odometers in kilometers instead of miles. Because most of these maps, like if you look at the maps from the race, they've got grid lines that are all in square kilometers. So even if I miss a distance or we need to change route, then I can just kind of glance at that box and say, well, that box is a kilometer and it's about half of a box, whatever it's going to be, and then relay to my teammates, hey, we need to look for an old washed up trail on the left that we may or may not see in 500 meters. And then we're all resetting our odometers and keeping an eye on that. Because again, like one person can easily forget and all of a sudden you're 200 meters past something. So kind of always relaying that to the team is really helpful. You're gonna say something?
Oh, like for that, for example, when we're all biking together, when we've reached a distance on a road that we've measured and it's time to like reset our distance, Tim will yell reset and we'll all reset our odometers and we'll all confirm reset, we'll say, and then everybody resets their odometers and then he says 3.5, look for an intersection on the left, and then we'll all be, okay, 3.5, we're all looking for the same thing. So kind of communication in that way. But to back up, like a lot of our teammates, like we can all navigate too.
Mhm.
Like we can, but a lot of like, and I think it's really cool to get experience and trade off and work on navigation. That's a huge thing. But for a lot of like elite teams, they'll decide like, okay, who is the best navigator in this certain circumstance? Because some people are better at coast steering, some people are better at micro navigation, bike nav, all that stuff. So figuring out who's your best navigator and then just designating that person to be the navigator and have the whole rest of the team support the navigator in just only doing that one job. And so the rest of us are like, okay, Tim, did you eat? Like, okay, you didn't eat. Okay, next hill. Okay, did you eat? Did you eat? Or what can we do? Like when we're stopping to help with the maps or stopping to like just help out in whatever way we can. So that way the lead navigator can be 100% focused on just that one job, because it's kind of the most important thing for adventure racing.
Do you carry all the maps, Tim, or do you have like teammates carry them and then like hand them to you when you need them? How do you keep track of all your maps?
Yeah, I mean, this race, I only had 2 bags of maps for this one because we cut stuff up, so I had them. But in a bigger race, I think we usually actually put them in the back of Anna's pack. And then I think I'm usually the one either if I've kind of preloaded them in an order, I know, in an order like, okay, the second map's going to be toward the front facing me, then I'll just grab them out. But yeah, usually we're putting them in bags ahead of time if they're either cut up or by section, and then one of us is drawing those out one at a time and then trading those maps out.
Did you use the aerial too though? Because did you cut your big one in 2 pieces?
Yeah, so actually I have like on one back-to-back, I had this bike map, and on the back side in the bag was this aerial. So I had 2 like map cases, and they were just back-to-back.
Gotcha.
So it was just 2 physical things, both of which were back-to-back. Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions? Got lots of great experience here, so if you have questions, it's the time to ask.
Kevin, how many races have you done now?
This is our first.
This was the first. Okay, I thought you were the guys we were talking to. That was your first. Okay, well, I hope it went well. Congrats.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What I was gonna ask is, how, for me, obviously I can walk up and down hills and get my legs a little bit stronger, but like just my overall self was a little tired after, certainly in the last hour, I was just kind of following along, like, okay, I get it. I understand what we're doing, but I'm pretty tired. Do you have any, especially for like super longer races, 30 hours, I feel like I would struggle. Do you take caffeine? Do you just practice doing long things?
I would make sure to eat a lot. Obviously, like practice at least at one point, go the distance of what you're planning to do,
Like per discipline, maybe.
Yeah, per discipline. Like if you're going to go overnight, just have at least one training session where you are training like through the entire night. So that way you kind of get to know like mentally what your roadblocks are, like at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're starting to hallucinate and you're feeling really tired, or how you at least know how your body responds to that, so you can figure out how to get through that. And there's a lot of different strategies, just like mental strategies to do that. But caffeine can help in shorter races. I wouldn't rely on it for like multi-day things, but I think my biggest thing, other than just training and experiencing overnight racing, is just eat. Because when you start to feel really out of it, really tired mentally, like you can't concentrate, it's usually you just need more glucose to your brain.
I had to save room for pizza.
I think too, like learning your teammates. I don't know if you will keep the same training team together, Kevin, or not. But learning what your teammates need, and like Anna said, reminding each other. So I need to drink water, otherwise the world catches up to me really fast. Where my wife needs to eat, and so like when she eats, I drink water, and we make sure that we kind of keep each other on check. But yeah, learning definitely just nutrition wise what you need to keep yourself going, and knowing that everybody's getting tired too.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, I think you learned that you're not supposed to allow me to have coffee in the morning of race day, correct?
Apparently.
Yeah.
We made the list. We were making a list of like what to do better next time.
Yeah, the coffee messed with my stomach. We'll just say that. Yeah, it was not pretty.
Yeah. I'll say too, we set an alarm on our watches, and it could be whatever your team wants, like either every half hour or hour. Just when it beeps, okay, everybody's got to eat, and you make sure everybody on the team eats like every hour, or for like Casey, everybody drink. And whether you need to or not, just kind of base that, but it's just kind of that, that constant reminder, because it's so easy to get behind. And then, you guys, the one other thing that we really found in this race that was helpful was how to keep your fingers and your toes warm. Obviously, having a pair of dry socks or a pair of dry gloves is huge, but if you don't have that, if your fingers start to go numb, our dog is here like wanting attention. Either doing big circles if you're on the bike, just as fast as you can in either direction, or shaking your hands vigorously like up and down. It gets the blood flow to your fingertips, and it's a huge help. Preventing frostbite. If you don't have something dry, just keep moving, keep wiggling your toes constantly. Even if you can't feel your toes, keep moving them. Same thing with your hands. If you can get them in your armpits or like down your pants to like warm them up, that all helps if you can't get dry. But we found we were reminding ourselves in this race, because we were all soaking wet and really cold, just to keep moving, and that got us through.
So Kevin, you shared the result link, and I just pulled it up. I want to say how impressed I am that you guys finished 10th out of 35 at your first race, because we finished dead last a number of times before we weren't dead last. And then we were like third to last for years. So congrats on that. That's really cool. That's an awesome start to your first adventure race. I'm really impressed.
I don't know why we did. So it might be you guys talking about your strategy. Our strategy was do whatever is easiest and then do whatever is next easiest after that. And so we didn't do any of this oh, let's go bike 20 miles away and then we'll come back and do all the easy stuff. I was like, no, we'll get all the easy points. And if we can get other stuff, that's cool, So it may have just been that, our strategy worked out well because the ambition was not rewarded today or yesterday.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
too, Kevin, you're going to learn that clearing a course and strategy end up being two different things sometimes. Sometimes if it's just a straight up race of who can clear the course, there's a lot of teams that will beat my wife and I. But if we know the course is not clearable and we have to make strategy choices about what to leave off, sometimes we can compete with teams that maybe are a lot faster than us because of the strategy choices. So
It never occurred to me that there would be multiple teams that do all the points and then it's a race in time. At least, certainly for our first one, we're just like, finish is our goal.
Yeah, I think if we hadn't had the road conditions that we had, I don't know, I was expecting we'd probably have a handful, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that were kind of, battling that out to clear it. But I don't know, Tim, what's your thought? Like on a good day, what do you all think? I know you know your pace pretty well.
Yeah, I've got our pace pretty well down. So I think had the conditions been good, both on foot and bike, because both of them were significantly slower based on the conditions, I think we would have cleared the course in, I think in 4 hours, 45 minutes. That was my time estimate, not accounting for any of the condition factors. And then as the conditions were just, I think honestly, once we got out there, we didn't think on foot they would be as bad as they were, just slipping and sliding around. And then certainly on the bike too, just so muddy. So yeah, I think it was significant in terms of how much more time things took yesterday.
Going back to Anna's comment about try to do an overnight training, like how does one train for this? Because most of the time the state park does not want you rummaging around in the woods. They want you to stay on the trail. So what's the deal with that?
This is being recorded, right? No, but so yeah, you're right. That's the rule in most state parks. But there's also like any of the national forests. Like if you go up to Cable Hayward, where Paul and Julie live, like those are all open 24/7, right? And I think that's a case for like a lot of like the state forests and national forests around. So that, you're right, isn't the case at state parks. And even if you don't do all the way through the night, like at least get out during the late hours and in the dark with a headlamp on and things like that, just to know how different it is trying to navigate at night versus in the daylight, where you can see features really far away really easily. Because it's a whole different game when you get out there at night and you can only see maybe 30 yards in front of you. And you have to kind of rely on just, a much shorter field of vision. But yeah, I think, I think there is a lot of areas. Ice Age Trail would be a great area that you can go on 24/7 and those Ice Age Trail segments. And I think there's a lot of other areas you could find that you could just make a weekend training session and go out on a Friday night and sleep in on Saturday morning once you finish.
I would say to back that up, Tim, county forest land, in addition to your state and federal, county forest land is a good resource. And the other thing, Kevin, is if you find a spot that has a really good trail system, like from a mountain bike trail system, they'll usually have a good ski trail system nearby. And as these race directors know, if you look at it from a mountain bike, ski trail, 2-track system, you can easily put in 8 to 10 hours in some of these areas if you treat it with 3 different disciplines and really not go anywhere different. You can be right in the same spot. So.
Yeah, that's good advice. One thing that a lot of times we do at post-race or pre-race is have the race directors talk about their events. And Tim, we didn't necessarily give you a chance to do that, obviously, Tim and Anna. So if you want to kind of pimp your race and even talk about some of the others and make some recommendations, that's helpful.
Yeah, sure. I have the flyer here too, because that's a great point. So hopefully everyone got the Wisconsin Adventure Race Series flyer. If not, you can find the schedule for it online. For anyone that's here that doesn't know, or for anyone that's watching this after the fact. Yeah, there's a bunch of great races coming up. There's one later this month, the Chasing the Bone. I think we've done that 7 or 8 years now that we've raced in it. It's an
April
awesome
30th.
race. Really good orienteering maps as part of that race always. It's a 4-hour and a 9-hour on April 30th. The race that Ann and I put on has 3 different lengths. It's a 3-hour, 8-hour, and 18-hour, and that's on Memorial Day weekend on May 28th up in the Wausau area. Chasing the Bone is kind of like southeast Wisconsin in the Kettle Moraine State Forest area in Greenbush. Then when we get into the summer, June 11th is a 5 and 12-hour Code Blue challenge that the guys from Medicus Rex put on. That's always an awesome event in the Madison area. Paula, you talk about your mule, of course. I don't know if you've shared the location yet. I don't know it.
It'll be within 45 minutes of Cable, Wisconsin. That's where Nationals was last year. We won't be on the same course. I usually like to mix that up quite a bit, so we're not repeating. But it'll be up there, and we've got a 5-hour, a 12-hour, and a 30-hour course. So something for everybody for sure. Lots and lots and lots of public land up here and tons of really good topography. So if you liked what you saw on Saturday, come on up. If you hated what you saw on Saturday, still come up. Pass it back to you.
And that's, I'll just give the shout that that's always our favorite race of the year to do, is that Stubborn Mule. And I don't know if we can do it this year because we signed ourselves up for a 5-day, but the Stubborn Mule 30 hours is always one of the best races out there. We tell everybody that. Minnesota Orienteering Club puts on a race on July 9th. It's a 3-hour and an 8-hour, really good maps on that. John Harris is putting on a 12 and a 36 in Eastern Minnesota on July 23rd. That's going to be a big one. The Pocket Gopher Extreme, that's called. Our friends at AR in Northern Illinois are putting on a race in like Rock Cut State Park. It's a 4-hour and a 10-hour on August 6th. Then Andy, who's been putting on adventure races longer than any of us, is putting on a 4-hour and 8-hour October 15th in the Southern Kettle Moraine Forest. It's called the Southern Kettle Moraine Challenge. And then the MAFF guys who were racing as Moose Planet is their team name that was racing yesterday. They're putting on, this year it's a 3, 8, and an 18. On the first weekend in November 5th down in Delafield. So I mean, it's so exciting. There's so many great races right here in Wisconsin and right on the borders in Illinois and Minnesota. So it's a great way to get better at the sport. Because honestly, I think the way you get better at the sport is by doing the sport. Like you can train as much as you want and try to make your own maps, but the best way to get better at this is just doing races. And we have more races in a centralized area than I think any region in the country at this point, in terms of the density of adventure races nearby if you're living in Wisconsin, which is pretty exciting. Great way to get better at the sport.
And I'll just tag on to that. Badger Orienteering has a lot of navigation events as well, orienteering events. I think there's one at Blue Mounds maybe next weekend. I'm not familiar. I'm seeing Casey nod, I think.
Yeah, coming up this weekend. I think it's actually Sunday the 10th. They have one at Blue Mounds, but they have Badger Orienteering has a website that you can go to. They've got, I think, 3 spring events this year, and then they come back again in the fall with some. So
Those are, I highly recommend that. I think, because you can just go out and do that in an afternoon. You're not committing to travel for a big race, especially if you're in southern Wisconsin. And then if you're a little bit more north, Minnesota Orienteering Club has a lot of events too. So they kind of run in the Twin Cities area, but sometimes they host events like in western Wisconsin. So keep your eye out on, and Minnock or Minnesota Orienteering Club is their website.
And those races usually take about an hour to complete and usually cost like $10 or $15. And it's all on foot, great maps. And it's a really good way. That's how, when I was living on the West Coast, I was orienteering between 2 clubs out there almost every weekend. And I think that's a way I started to get really good at navigation, was going to orienteering events and just practicing that really detailed navigation.
I was curious where your 5-day race is.
The Rootstock Racing out of Pennsylvania is putting on a race called the Endless Mountains Adventure Race. And yeah, we're gonna be out there doing that. I think is it a 4 or 5 day? I think it's a 5-day, yeah. So 5 days out in the Pennsylvania Allegheny Mountains, called the Endless Mountains Adventure Race. It'll be a big one. We're excited for it.
Who's this going out to nationals?
Oh, we're thinking about it. We're not sure yet. Joel, you gonna go? Casey?
I was planning on it, but based on what the doctor told me the other day, I'm not sure if this wing will be ready yet for that time frame. I was put out 6 months from paddling, so.
Bummer. I hope the procedure went well, like rotator cuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way it feels right now, it doesn't feel like it went well, but it's only like 72 hours out. So I'm assuming it's better.
Okay, good man. Well, hope he heals up well.
I know the race director, Ishai, and I mean, he puts on amazing events, so I'm sure it's gonna be just an incredible experience. It just is like, for us, it's a long way to travel, and I think some of it is at altitude, which I don't do well at altitude, so we're still debating on it.
I can barely stay awake to watch your dots overnight, so I don't think I could go overnight yet. We are still working on that 18-hour, making that jump to that 18-hour.
Based on what I heard today, Casey, you could do the 18-hour. Especially if it's as cold as it was last year, because you won't get tired at all.
All right. Any last things anyone wants to ask or share? Thank you so much for being available. It was nice to hear from everybody tonight and hear what some race stories and some strategy. So I hope it was helpful, Kevin, for a new team also, but it was great that you had stuff to share too. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks for hosting this, Paula.
Paula,
Yeah.
thanks for the great race and for pulling this event too, just talking.
Good to see everyone. Have a great week.
Great to talk to everybody.
See you at the next one.
See you.
Thank you.